15 celebrities who aged terribly, and number 7? You won't believe your eyes. When we think of Hollywood, we imagine timeless beauty, red carpets, and picture-perfect stars. But behind the glamour lies a truth no one likes to talk about. Time is merciless, especially to those who spent years basking in the spotlight, stirring scandals, and burning every bridge in sight. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 15 celebrities whose appearances and reputations have taken shocking turns. And number 7? It's so jaw-dropping, you'll have to see it to believe it. This isn't just about wrinkles or bad surgery. This is about total transformation, inside and out. You clicked because you're curious, and trust me, you're not alone. We've all wondered, what really happens when the fame fades? How do the rich and famous crumble when the cameras stop rolling? The truth is darker and far more disturbing than you'd expect. Some of these stars were once idolized for their beauty. Others were praised for their talent and charm. Chevy Chase's journey from comedy royalty to Hollywood exile is one of the most heartbreaking falls from grace in entertainment history. In the 1970s and 80s, Chase was untouchable, a founding member of Saturday Night Live, whose deadpan delivery and brilliant physical comedy launched a blockbuster film career. Hits like Caddyshack, Fletch, and the National Lampoon's Vacation series cemented his place as a comedy icon. With his tall frame, classic good looks, and razor-sharp timing, Chase wasn't just funny, he was a rare leading man in comedy. At his peak, he was earning $7 million per film, a staggering figure at the time. But while audiences laughed, something darker brewed behind the scenes. Chase was known not just for pratfalls, but for burning bridges. He was the first major star to leave SNL, a move that rubbed many the wrong way. Tensions boiled over when he returned to host, famously getting into a backstage fistfight with Bill Murray, who reportedly called him a medium talent. That jab would follow Chase for decades. As his fame grew, so did his reputation for being difficult, arrogant, toxic, and cruel. On the set of Community, cast members recalled disturbing incidents. Donald Glover accused him of making racist remarks, while creator Dan Harmon said Chase would deliberately test boundaries, saying racist, horrible stuff, just to see what he could get away with. Female writers also described encounters with him as demeaning, filled with crude jokes and dismissive behavior. Physically, Chase's transformation is almost as shocking as his professional collapse. At 81, he's nearly unrecognizable from the charming comic we once knew. His once athletic frame has withered into a hunched figure with a bloated face and labored movement. The signature smirk now often appears as a grimace. His voice, once smooth and confident, is now hoarse and tired. The toll of a hard-lived life shows in every step, every breath, every glance. What's most tragic, though, isn't just how he looks, but how he's aged emotionally. Chase had chances to make a comeback. His role on Community could have reintroduced him to a new generation, but his behavior again alienated everyone around him. Instead of humility, he doubled down. In a 2018 interview, he called Community a big mistake and shrugged off his reputation with a simple, defiant line, "I am who I am, and I like who I am." And that may be the saddest part of all. Unlike others who've aged with grace, introspection, or even apology, Chase seems blind to the wreckage he's left behind. Once surrounded by laughter, he now stands alone, estranged from collaborators, abandoned by fans, and seemingly confused as to why the spotlight has gone dark. His physical decline feels like a mirror to his career, the visible erosion of a man who had it all and pushed it all away. Madonna, the name once synonymous with fearless reinvention and pop royalty, is now at the center of a far more painful transformation. At 65, the Queen of Pop seems locked in a desperate war against time, and the results are both heartbreaking and hard to ignore. For decades, Madonna broke barriers. She challenged taboos, shaped trends, and redefined what it meant to be a female icon in music. But now, rather than embracing the wisdom and power that come with age, she's chosen to chase youth through drastic means, leaving behind the grace and authenticity that once made her magnetic. Her once iconic face, known for its sharp, expressive features, has been altered so heavily by cosmetic procedures that it barely resembles the Madonna the world grew up with. Instead of reflecting a life boldly lived, her expression has grown unnaturally stiff, almost mask-like. Fans no longer see the fierce gaze that once lit up stadiums, but rather a version of Madonna that feels filtered, forced, and distant. But it's not just her appearance that has sparked concern, it's her behavior. On stage, she pushes through tightly choreographed routines with dancers young enough to be her grandchildren, often coming across not as empowered, but as out of sync with the moment. Online, her social media presence has spiraled into strange, heavily edited videos and awkward posts that have left even her most loyal followers puzzled and uncomfortable. What's most tragic is the lost opportunity. Madonna had the platform, the legacy, and the voice to redefine aging for a generation of women in entertainment. She could have shown the world that strength, confidence, and sensuality don't fade with age, they evolve. Instead, her journey has become a cautionary tale of what happens when a star tries too hard to outrun time, rather than owning it. Still, behind the surgeries, the filters, and the headlines, we catch glimpses of the legend she once was, and perhaps still could be, if she ever chose to embrace the beauty of who she truly is now. Steven Seagal's rise and fall, from action icon to industry outcast. There was a time when Steven Seagal ruled the action genre. With his sleek ponytail, icy stare, and lightning-fast Aikido moves, he became a box office juggernaut in the late 80s and early 90s. Films like Under Siege and Hard to Kill made him one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood. He wasn't just an actor, he was a brand. But fast forward to today, and the transformation is nothing short of stunning and tragic. Physically, Seagal is almost unrecognizable. Once lean and agile, he's now bloated and sluggish, reportedly gaining over 100 pounds since his prime. Yet he clings to his old image, still dressed in all black, with a dyed ponytail and tinted glasses, as if trying to hold on to a version of himself the world has long moved on from. At 72, his public appearances draw more shock than admiration. Viral photos and awkward martial arts demonstrations, where he barely moves as stuntmen theatrically fall around him, have turned him into an internet meme. But his body isn't the only thing that's changed. Seagal's reputation has plummeted, dragged down by a trail of disturbing allegations. Numerous women, including actresses like Jenny McCarthy and Portia de Rossi, have come forward with stories of sexual misconduct during auditions. Police reports filed as recently as 2018 only added to a pattern of accusations that stretch back decades. Meanwhile, former co-stars like John Leguizamo and Erika Eleniak have spoken publicly about his on-set bullying and volatile behavior, shattering the myth of the disciplined martial artist. As Hollywood turned its back, Seagal's career sank into the murky world of direct-to-video films with laughably generic titles like End of a Gun and Contract to Kill. In most of these roles, he barely stands, often sitting for scenes while stunt doubles handle the action. Once celebrated for doing his own stunts, Seagal now avoids movement altogether. Perhaps the strangest chapter in his downfall is his public alignment with authoritarian regimes. In 2016, he accepted Russian citizenship from Vladimir Putin, later becoming a vocal supporter of the Kremlin, even defending the invasion of Ukraine on state-run TV. Russia named him a special envoy to the US, an ironic title for someone whose reputation in America is in ruins. Today, Steven Seagal lives mostly in Russia, a fallen idol clinging to a carefully crafted persona that no longer fits. He's no longer just a faded star, he's a symbol of how arrogance, controversy, and unchecked power can turn a Hollywood icon into a global cautionary tale. His outward decline mirrors the darker truths that insiders now say were always there, hidden beneath the stoicism, behind the shades, and buried under the myth of a martial arts hero who couldn't live up to his own legend. Rudy Giuliani, he may not be a Hollywood star, but his fall from grace has played out with all the drama of a tragic film. Once hailed as America's mayor, for his steady leadership during the chaos of 9/11, Giuliani was a national symbol of strength and resilience. But fast forward 2 decades, and that same man has become nearly unrecognizable, physically, politically, and morally. Now 81, Giuliani cuts a figure of decline, gaunt, pale, and often disheveled. with public appearances that spark more concern than confidence. What happened? Years of legal battles, controversial alliances, and failed attempts to overturn an election have turned him into a shadow of his former self. The pressure has not just aged him, it's consumed him. Once the face of law and order, Giuliani now finds himself entangled in investigations, mocked on late-night television, and whispered about in the very circles that once celebrated him. His story is a stark reminder. Public respect, no matter how hard-earned, can vanish in an instant. Giuliani's transformation isn't just about aging, it's about the toll of choices, the weight of ambition, and the cost of clinging to power too tightly for too long. Mickey Rourke's story isn't just about fame, it's about the cost of chasing something more. In the 1980s, he was the epitome of a Hollywood heartthrob. With smoldering eyes, raw charisma, and unforgettable performances in films like 9.5 Weeks, Rourke seemed destined for screen legend status. But at the height of his fame, he walked away from it all. Swapping scripts for gloves, Mickey pursued a professional boxing career in the early 90s, a decision that would change his life forever. The brutal sport took a devastating toll. Blow after blow, his once iconic face was battered beyond recognition. He underwent multiple reconstructive surgeries, but the damage had already been done. When he finally returned to acting, Hollywood barely recognized him. And worse, a string of botched plastic surgeries left him trapped in a body that no longer reflected the man he once was. Now at 72, Mickey Rourke continues to battle against time, turning to more cosmetic procedures in a desperate attempt to restore what was lost. But each new appearance seems to push him further from the image the world once adored. His story is a haunting reflection of how fame, regret, and the fear of fading away can drive a man to extremes. Mickey Rourke didn't just lose his looks. He lost the version of himself that once made the world stop and stare. Courtney Love, the untamed spirit of 90s grunge, has lived a life as loud and raw as her music. As the fiery frontwoman of Hole and the widow of Kurt Cobain, she once embodied a rebellious beauty that felt both dangerous and magnetic. But the years haven't been kind. Decades of substance abuse, public meltdowns, and a life lived on the edge have left their mark, not just on her reputation but on her very face. Now 60, Courtney bears the visible toll of a life burned at both ends. Her once striking features have been reshaped by time, addiction, and attempts to undo the damage through cosmetic surgery. Her legacy is just as complicated. Once praised for her fearless artistry, she's now often remembered for social media outbursts, bitter feuds, and a painful estrangement from her daughter, Frances Bean Cobain. Though she's had moments of clarity and comeback, the spiral has been hard to ignore. What makes her aging so jarring isn't just the passing of time, it's the stark contrast between the fierce rock goddess she once was and the haunted figure she appears as now. Courtney Love didn't just survive the storm of rock and roll, she became a walking reminder of its brutal cost. Axel Rose, once the untamed spirit of rock and roll, now a shadow of the legend he used to be. In the late 1980s, he was more than just the frontman of Guns N' Roses, he was rock's living wildfire. Lean, wild-eyed, draped in bandanas, and dancing like a snake ready to strike, Axel owned every stage he stepped on. His 5-octave wail could slice through a stadium like lightning, and his presence felt almost mythical, dangerous, electrifying, unforgettable. But time hasn't been kind to rock's once golden god. The fiery red hair has faded. His face, once chiseled and intense, has grown puffy and weary. And that voice, once a weapon of pure rock fury, has all but broken. Today, concert footage often shows Rose struggling to reach the notes that once came effortlessly. Backing vocalists carry the high notes now in anthems like Welcome to the Jungle and Sweet Child O' Mine. Behind the scenes, his legendary perfectionism morphed into paranoia. Bandmates from the 90s describe him as increasingly erratic, controlling, and isolated. The man who once had fans waiting hours just to see him perform eventually became infamous for no-shows and canceled gigs, more known for chaos than craft. And yet, in rare moments, the defiance fades. After a painfully off-key performance, Rose once admitted on Twitter, "I know I'm not the singer I was." It was a rare crack in the armor, a glimpse of vulnerability from a man once known for his arrogance. Watching Axel Rose now, moving cautiously across stages he once ruled with raw power, is a heartbreaking contrast. Unlike other aging rock icons who've gracefully adapted to time's erosion, Rose seems to fight it, relentlessly, and maybe hopelessly. His battle with age isn't just physical, it's a war between past glory and present reality. And for fans who remember that electric frontman in his prime, it's a painful reminder that even gods of rock can fall. Brigitte Bardot. Few stars have plummeted from grace as dramatically as she has. Once hailed as the most beautiful woman in the world, Bardot was the ultimate symbol of 1950s and 60s sensuality, a French icon who redefined fashion, film, and femininity with her untamed allure and effortless charm. She wasn't just admired, she was worshipped. But the Brigitte Bardot of today, now 89, is nearly unrecognizable, not just in appearance, but in spirit. After stepping away from the silver screen in 1973, she withdrew into seclusion, dedicating herself to animal rights. But as the decades passed, her activism took a dark and disturbing turn. Bardot has been convicted 5 times for hate speech, unleashing a barrage of anti-Muslim rants, attacks on immigrants, and aligning herself with far-right ideologies in France. Her once celebrated name has become a lightning rod for controversy, her legacy stained by words that cut far deeper than time ever could. Physically, Bardot has resisted the pressures of cosmetic perfection. She's allowed herself to age naturally, living in solitude on her estate in Saint-Tropez. But the weathered lines on her face and the hardened glint in her eyes seem to mirror the bitterness that now defines her public image. The contrast is haunting. The vibrant, free-spirited woman who once embodied joie de vivre has given way to an isolated figure shrouded in anger. It's a tragic transformation, one that leaves behind a legacy as complicated as it is heartbreaking. Marlon Brando. The name alone once echoed with power, beauty, and raw talent. But behind the legend lies one of the most tragic downfalls in Hollywood history. A rise so brilliant and a fall so devastating, it still stuns even the most devoted fans. In the 1950s, Brando redefined acting. His performances in A Streetcar Named Desire and On the Waterfront weren't just iconic. They were revolutionary. Young Brando wasn't only a gifted actor. He was a force. Smoldering, magnetic, and impossibly handsome. He embodied the kind of masculine allure that shook the industry. Women were captivated. Men idolized him. Directors worshipped him. He was the gold standard. But brilliance comes with a price. And for Brando, that price was staggering. By the 1970s, even with career highlights like The Godfather, the cracks had begun to show. His body ballooned, his commitment wavered, and his behavior turned erratic. On the set of Apocalypse Now, he showed up severely overweight, unprepared, and indifferent. He refused to learn his lines, demanded outrageous fees, and wore an earpiece to be fed dialogue, an insult to the craft he once revolutionized. Director Francis Ford Coppola was left battling Brando's unpredictable moods and time-wasting antics. And it got worse. During the infamous Island of Dr. Moreau, Brando became a caricature of himself. He demanded that a little person follow him around in a matching costume. In one baffling scene, he wore an ice bucket on his head, for no reason at all. Co-star Val Kilmer remembered days where Brando refused to leave his trailer, halting production and burning through money. Off-screen, the chaos continued. His son Christian was convicted of manslaughter. His daughter Cheyenne tragically took her own life. While these weren't Brando's direct fault, those close to the family pointed to his turbulent parenting and absence as a source of deep emotional instability. Brando, once the king of Hollywood, retreated into isolation. He moved to a private island in Tahiti, surrounded by silence, eccentric habits, and spiraling health. Staff described bizarre midnight feasts of ice cream and fruit, eaten until he got sick, and then continued eating. He weighed nearly 400 pounds. He answered doors naked just to shock people. He became a ghost of his former self. By the time he passed in 2004, Brando had faded into reclusion, largely abandoned by the friends and collaborators he once inspired. The rebel of the wild one, who once prowled across screens like a panther, could barely walk across a room in his final years. His last performance in The Score, opposite Edward Norton and Robert De Niro, felt less like a comeback, and more like a haunting reminder of what had been lost. Marlon Brando didn't just fall. He collapsed under the weight of his fame, his demons, and his indulgences. No star fell from a greater height. And his story remains a chilling warning of what happens when genius burns too bright for too long. Val Kilmer, from Hollywood icon to a tragic final act. Val Kilmer was once the definition of a Hollywood leading man. Handsome, talented, and magnetic. In the 80s and 90s, he owned the screen in unforgettable roles. The cocky Iceman in Top Gun, the tortured genius Jim Morrison in The Doors, and the brooding caped crusader in Batman Forever. With his sculpted jawline, electric blue eyes, and undeniable swagger, Kilmer didn't just play stars, he was one. His casting as Batman was more than a career milestone. It was a Hollywood coronation, placing him among the elite. But behind the scenes, things were unraveling. Kilmer quickly developed a reputation for being combative and unpredictable. Directors called him difficult. Co-stars whispered about on-set tension. On the island of Dr. Moreau, he reportedly locked himself in his trailer for days, halting production. Tommy Lee Jones once famously snapped at him, "I cannot sanction your buffoonery." As his star faded, health problems began to dim his once glowing presence. Throat cancer robbed him of his iconic voice and left him physically unrecognizable. By the time he passed away on April 1, 2025, at the age of 65, the transformation was heartbreakingly complete, from golden boy to a ghost of his former self. And yet, even in decline, Kilmer didn't disappear. He kept creating, kept fighting, and never let illness define him. He faced his final act with a quiet grace, refusing to let Hollywood's cruelty or his own struggles silence him completely. His story is one of extremes, of fame and fall, beauty and illness, ego and endurance. But maybe that's what makes it unforgettable. Val Kilmer didn't just fade away. He burned bright, stumbled hard, and still found a way to stand tall at the end. Lindsay Lohan, once the golden girl of early 2000s Hollywood, wasn't just a rising star, she was the star. From her breakout roles in The Parent Trap, Freaky Friday, and the cultural juggernaut Mean Girls, Lohan had it all: charm, talent, comedic timing, and the rare ability to light up a screen with ease. She was America's sweetheart, until the spotlight turned harsh. What came next was one of the most heartbreaking and public meltdowns in celebrity history. DUIs, failed drug tests, court appearances, and jail time became regular tabloid fodder. Her life played out like a slow-motion car crash, impossible to ignore and painful to watch. The transformation wasn't just personal, it was physical. The bright-eyed teenager aged rapidly in front of the world's eyes. Her once youthful glow faded into a face marked by the telltale signs of substance abuse, exhaustion, and relentless media scrutiny. By her late 20s, Lindsay looked decades beyond her years. Desperate attempts to reverse the damage with cosmetic procedures only added to the tragedy, leaving her with a tightened, artificial appearance that couldn't mask the years of wear and trauma. Her promising career unraveled into a trail of low-budget films, missed opportunities, and tabloid punchlines. In recent years, she's tried to reclaim control, moving to Dubai, stepping away from the chaos, and choosing her projects carefully. And while there are flickers of the star she once was, the scars of her past are etched into her face, her reputation, and her legacy. Now at 38, she looks older than many actresses in their 50s, not just in appearance, but in the weight she carries. Lindsay Lohan's story isn't just about fame gone wrong. It's a haunting reminder of how brutally fast Hollywood can devour its young, and how the price of early stardom, when paid in full, can take more than just a career. It can steal your youth, your peace, and your very sense of self. Nick Nolte's transformation is one of the most jarring in Hollywood history. Once the embodiment of rugged masculinity, he lit up the screen in the 70s and 80s with powerhouse performances in films like 48 Hours and The Prince of Tides. In 1992, he was even crowned People magazine's sexiest man alive. But the man who once turned heads with his chiseled features and commanding presence now walks a very different path. Behind the scenes, Nolte was quietly battling demons. His decades-long struggle with addiction to alcohol and GHB took a devastating toll, not just on his health, but on his appearance and spirit. The once strapping leading man slowly gave way to a disheveled, gravel-voiced figure, marked by time and pain. At 83, Nolte is almost unrecognizable. His square jawline has given way to softer lines. His broad, athletic frame has bent under the weight of age and years of wear. His iconic blonde hair has turned ghostly white, wild and unkempt, more mountain hermit than movie star. Yet he continues to act, now taking on roles that mirror his weathered look, gritty, broken, and raw. Nick Nolte's story isn't just about aging. It's about how addiction can warp not just a body, but a legacy. Once the face of American masculinity, Nolte now stands as a haunting reminder of how quickly time, especially when accelerated by addiction, can reshape even the most iconic faces in Hollywood. Terrence Howard's Hollywood story reads like a cautionary tale dipped in brilliance and shadow. Once hailed as one of the most promising actors of his generation, Howard rose to fame in the early 2000s with critically acclaimed roles that earned him an Oscar nomination for Hustle and Flow and a prime spot in the Marvel Universe as James Rhodes in the original Iron Man. He was smooth-talking, magnetic, and seemingly unstoppable, a rising star poised for greatness. But just as quickly as he rose, Terrence Howard began to fall. And not because of aging in the traditional sense. What truly aged him in Hollywood's eyes wasn't his looks, but his actions, erratic behavior, unsettling interviews, and a string of personal controversies that made studios uneasy. Howard lost his Marvel role due to reported salary disputes and difficult on-set conduct, but that was only the beginning. Multiple divorces, allegations of domestic abuse, and his infamous interviews, where he passionately argued that 1 × 1 is equal to 2, and revealed his own unorthodox theories of the universe, turned him into a figure of ridicule more than reverence. His charisma once lit up the screen. Now it raises eyebrows. When Empire hit the airwaves, it seemed like a shot at redemption. For a while it worked. Viewers remembered the old Terrence, the talent, the presence, the edge. But his public image never fully recovered. Talk of retiring from acting to reveal the truth about the universe only deepened the industry's unease. Today, at 55, Terrence Howard carries the weary face of someone who's lived 1,000 lives. He looks older than his age, not just in skin but in spirit. The young actor once destined for A-list immortality now stands on the outside looking in. A man whose genius was often eclipsed by the chaos he created. In the end, Howard's story is less about talent lost and more about bridges burned. A reminder that in Hollywood, brilliance can open doors, but it's character that keeps them open. Gary Busey. Once hailed as one of Hollywood's rising stars, Gary Busey's journey from Oscar-nominated actor to eccentric reality TV personality is as tragic as it is bizarre. In the late 1970s, Busey dazzled audiences with his raw, magnetic performance as rock and roll legend Buddy Holly, earning him critical acclaim and a shot at lasting stardom. But everything took a dark turn in 1988. That year, Busey was involved in a devastating motorcycle crash. Riding without a helmet, he suffered a traumatic brain injury so severe it required emergency brain surgery. The aftermath changed everything. Busey himself later admitted the accident altered his personality, his thinking, and the very way he processed the world around him. What followed was a public unraveling. Gone was the intense, focused actor. In his place emerged a man known for wild interviews, erratic behavior, and emotional outbursts that often left viewers confused or concerned. His appearance, too, began to shift. His facial features became exaggerated, his once rugged looks giving way to something more uncanny. Botched cosmetic procedures only added to the surreal transformation. His overly large teeth became a signature, one that drew mockery rather than admiration. At 80, Busey has leaned into his unpredictable persona, appearing on reality shows like Celebrity Apprentice and Celebrity Big Brother, often playing the role of the eccentric wildcard. But beneath the strange soundbites and headline-grabbing moments is a haunting truth. We are witnessing the slow decline of a man who once had the power to move audiences, now reduced to comic relief. Gary Busey's story isn't just about aging, it's about how a tragic accident, followed by questionable choices, turned a gifted actor into a walking cautionary tale. What could have been a career of depth and legacy became, instead, a spectacle, entertaining to some, heartbreaking to others. O.J. Simpson. No star has fallen harder or more publicly than him. Once celebrated as the ultimate American success story, a record-shattering NFL legend who became a Hollywood actor and the face of national ad campaigns, Simpson's name is now a symbol of scandal, heartbreak, and disgrace. In the 1970s, O.J. wasn't just a football icon, he was a cultural phenomenon. With his electric charm and magnetic smile, he became one of the first black athletes to break into mainstream advertising. Who could forget those famous Hertz commercials, showing him sprinting through airports, graceful and unstoppable? He was the golden boy, admired, respected, even beloved. But that golden image didn't just fade, it shattered. The physical decline of O.J. was stark. The once chiseled superstar aged rapidly during his 9-year prison sentence for armed robbery and kidnapping. Gone was the athletic build. In its place stood a man bloated by time and regret. Prison photos revealed sagging skin, glazed eyes, and a man who looked twice his age. When he walked out of prison in 2017, he didn't stride. He shuffled, bent and broken, unrecognizable from the legend he once was. And yet, O.J.'s true aging wasn't just physical, it was spiritual, emotional, existential. Despite being acquitted in the infamous 1995 criminal trial, the civil court's judgment, finding him liable for the wrongful deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, forever tarnished his name. The trial itself was a national obsession, watched by over 150 million people. It transformed him overnight from an American hero to a national controversy. Those who once stood by him now speak of a man consumed by resentment. Former teammates say the O.J. they knew disappeared long ago, replaced by someone bitter, isolated, and visibly carrying the weight of disgrace. By the time of his death in April 2024, at the age of 76 from cancer, Simpson had become a living contradiction, a symbol not just of decline, but of how fame can turn on you, brutally and completely. His aging was tragic because it wasn't just skin deep. It was the erosion of a legacy, the unraveling of a persona. From icon to outcast. From admired to avoided. From greatness to ghost. Aging touches everyone, but in the spotlight, it can be merciless. These 15 celebrities didn't age like fine wine. They aged under pressure, through scandal, sorrow, and sometimes shame. If this video made you reflect on the hidden cost of fame, hit that like button, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more revealing celebrity stories. Thanks for watching, and remember, beauty fades, but the truth always finds the camera.